Commission meeting to order. Just wanted to point out this is a rescheduled date, rescheduling our December 5th regularly scheduled meeting this month. Item 2 on the agenda is roll call. We've got Scott McCoy, Debbie Rainey, Christine Slaughter, and Mike Berkeley in attendance. We do have a quorum. Item number 3, approval of the agenda. Discussion? Vote? Approve? Aye. Agenda approved. Item number 4, approval of the minutes. We've got our minute package from the meeting on Tuesday, 3rd of October. The meeting in November was not held due to a lack of quorum, so the meeting package we're approving is just October's. Motion to approve. Any discussion? Vote to approve, aye. Minutes approved. Section number 5, starting at 5.1, roadscapes update. This is on Highway 196 Junction in Fairview. Plant replacement, mulch weed abatement. It's an update from Mike.
Yeah, okay. Met with representative of LSI in November. It was November the 8th. Met with him, did another walkthrough, picked up on some other plants that had died, updated that list. He replaced it and made it official on November the 17th, was the final walkthrough with all the plants replaced. November 17th of 2017. And the plants that they replaced them with are actually look better than the initial plants. And that's all I have on that.
So in our last minutes, it appears we had two different concerns, I guess. One was the dead plants, we just talked about those, and the other was the remediation of this contaminated mulch, and it wasn't clear. There was still some uncertainty about who might be responsible for that. What's the next step to resolving that? I guess putting that out to the table.
You're not going to get them to admit that they put in contaminated mulch. And when I spoke with Barry Castle, which is the representative, he said, well, all of this happened before I came, so therefore he's out of that. I've made, with LSI, Barry Castle. And that's B-A-R-Y-E, Barry Castle. And he mentioned it to Paul Stacy III, the owner, and says, no, we did not put in contaminated mulch, so I don't know how much further I can take that. And, you know, if the city, here's what will happen, and strictly from what I know about those plants, is that if the city can continue to maintain through weed eating around those shrubs, they will fill in, and there won't be much of a need for mulch anyway. But it's costing the city, and Keith Paisley gave me a figure of it takes 3 guys. I think it was a total of 6 labor hours to weed eat that. In other words, 3 guys and about 2 hours to do the weed eating around those shrubs in lieu of mulch.
But is that outside?
I don't know. Well, my take is that, you know, they're part of the maintenance, whether it's mowing or mulching or weed eating. That's their job, but we had to put it in to say, okay, if we had that mulched, here's the dollar amount that would not be spent on that to maintain it the way it is now. Right. It's every 2 weeks during during the summer, during the growing season. And I don't know, I'm sorry, I can't tell you what that dollar figure would be, but that's the labor hours. No, I've got that figure back in my office of how much it. $10,000? That was the plan. The $10,000 was what LSI was gonna charge to come in and weed it and mulch that. The mulch itself won't cost $10,000. Say, I'd say probably $3,000, $4,000. I'm not sure I'd call it a mulch deposit. It's wood chips that from the chipping, and they compost that, and then they'll use that back out again. But I would guess if they've been mulching, this looks like midnight mulch they've used around the city hall, and so they have hardwood mulch somewhere. This is not wood chip here. This is bought mulch. And I don't think it looks bad when they do.
Unless the city has.
Yeah.
Right.
So given that assessment, what would be the action item?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, well, we talked, there's two paths, right and a left turn. Leave it, let them kind of mulch it on their schedule with the hourly cost. And then Debbie had put forward an idea, well, unless we've got some mulch, then there might be. But if that's, we can leave that question and,
I can find that out.
I don't know. I'm scared of the mulch after this last run. And what they're doing right now and keeping it, weeded it down, keeping it down, it's okay for the plants. I'm scared of any more mulch unless, now, the city buys mulch from a reputable vendor. I can inspect that. Good. It's a lot of mulch. Do that roadscape. not just in the median, it's the turnouts, the trees, where the grass beds are, the ornamental grasses. In some of those, like where there's muley grass in one of those beds, there's some other shrubs in one of those turnout beds. Having that mulched, that would look better. I'm not sure about the median. But, you know, and everybody's saying, well, for the aesthetics, it would be better. I'm thinking about, you know, the health of the plant right now. I'm very happy with the weed eating that's going on around it. And I don't know if anybody can really see it, but I've seen growth in those plants. And some of those St. John's worts that went in, there was like 301 gallons that went in. I've actually seen them double in size. And of course, we've had a good summer, and it's helped. So our first growing season on that, it was a good growing season. We pay attention to the feedback from the community right now. I don't hear as much as what we heard last spring. And so I think it's going to be, people are going to start getting used to this massing effect. So my guess is another good growing season, and so a lot of these plants that were spaced at about 2 feet apart will start touching each other. And that massing is what's going to stand out. But if you do mulch, you'll have to keep it mulched. A lot of money and a lot of sweat equity. Let's do.
Sounds good.
I don't want to, just for the record, I don't want to ever let this go. And I just don't want to hear anybody saying, well, we need to mow it all down again either. So,
Has there been discussion?
oh, back in the summer when the weeds were so bad, it's like, okay, we can't see the plants that were planted because of the weeds. So we kept the weeds down through, you know, the public works, and they've done a great job. And, you know, and I've noticed one of the things when I inspected the other day, a couple of weeks ago, is that I don't see scarring on the base of the plants from the weed eaters hitting. So the guys have been very careful. Good job they're doing.
So the action that we'll take is we will consider this item complete for our purposes now, and we will include an update/review discussion in the May 2018 agenda. Any other discussion on 5.2? I'm sorry, 5.1. 5.2, Tree City update, the Arbor Day proclamation, review the draft proclamation, some discussion about the BOC steps involved in that and other actions that might apply. I did, last meeting, brought several examples from different cities, different proclamations, and I've cobbled what I thought were kind of the best points of 2 or 3 of these different proclamations, as well as I included one little paragraph recognizing Evangeline Bowie, Dr. Bowie, and the land. I'll just read what I put in there. Where I pulled this information from was the Bowie website. There's a park website, and inside there's a history component that talks a little bit about the history. And so this comes from there. What I would say is it probably needs to be verified. I'm not sure who the best person, whether we could give that to the park or to Keith or Friends of Bowie, who would actually look at that paragraph and just say, yes, it's, you know, because it came from the website. I just don't know who verified it, but I'll read it. It says, Dr. Evangeline Bowie, using land management techniques, including planting over 500,000 trees that transform barren and eroded land into a park treasure gifted to the city that now includes 700 acres of forest, lakes, and 17 miles of trails. So that's one of the whereas paragraphs that we're just describing why we want to have this proclamation. The other piece that needs to be included in here, and I did not include it, mainly from same reasons, I think, but I didn't have the luxury of looking it up, is I know we talked about including a whereas paragraph remarking upon the city tree. And so I thought I might ask, I can send this example to Mike and maybe ask him if he could come up with a couple of sentences that are just factually correct, and we'll include that in there. And so if we can get the Bowie history paragraph vetted and then get the city tree paragraph in there, I think at that point we'd be ready to hand it maybe to Debbie to take to the BOC and have it reviewed, and whatever other comments they might have or actions they need to apply, to get it actually voted on and approved at the BOC. This is, the tree proclamation is one of the requirements that we need for the Tree City recognition and qualification. On that, I'm thinking if we could, at the very bottom of this document, we've got kind of two Arbor Day dates that would stand out that we could pick. We talked a little bit about it in our last meeting. One is the Tennessee State Arbor Day, which is the first Friday in March. And then there's the National Arbor Day, which is the last Friday in April. And I think in our last meeting, we talked a little bit that maybe the April date, it would be prettier. And so that might get the community more engaged, excited. And so that's fine. We would just need to put that date if that's what we agree that would be the appropriate date. Timing. Let's assume that we get all of that. We've got our date picked out. We've got our remarks upon the recognition of the city tree. We've got our Bowie history vetted. For the timing for the BOC to actually vote for it, I'm thinking maybe, and this is me guessing, that with the Tree City application, turning that in January, so we would start it with the January 2018, when then we turn in our application, here's our proclamation. I'll need to meet with somebody at the city, probably the city manager, for 15 minutes to get just an updated budget for our spend in 2018. I've got the last budget. And with that and this passed, then turn that package in January, and that gives them a couple of 2 or 3 months to crunch through it, ask questions so that we can make that announcement, ideally right around when we're getting ready to have our Arbor Day recognition here, the actual date.
April.
I think April's what we talked about.
It's the red buds, if we continue to build the city tree, there is the red bud. The red buds can be in bloom, coming into bloom during that time. And if we do Arbor Day here at City Hall, and we have more of the red buds, different colors, weeping red buds, different color blooms, then you've got something to, March more than likely would not happen. And that's just the 20-something of April. It's the last Friday and Saturday of April, yeah, 27th is. But, and even though I may not be able to attend, I've got about 100 oaks set aside in 1-gallon containers that we can use to give away. Because I don't think you're gonna get anything from the forestry. Not without paying for them. In April? We did this before, and we did bare root. These are actually in 1 gallons. And it'd be nice, and then so people can come, and we had a pretty good turnout, if I recall, years ago for that. Had them on the back of a truck, people showed up, took a tree home. every bit. The difference is this time they're in containers. You know, we could probably bare root them and make it logistically a little easier to deal with than a 1 gallon pot with soil in it. But and what we can do with your blessings is that we can give the rest of them to Bowie if we don't give them all away. I'm trying to remember how many. I think there was towards the end of the day when we were giving, and this is when the forestry division of forestry did give us these trees, and there were pin oaks. Might have been. There was 2, 3 different species. I know the pin oaks were. I remember those because they were beautiful, and fully dormant. And you know the thing with that is that when it started towards the end of the day, it didn't look like we were going to get them all given away, so we started giving people extras. That was, and I think they really appreciated it. When was the tornado? I think that was, but, so, you know, that could be an incentive, and I believe it was in the Observer that the trees were being given out for Arbor Day, and boy, that brought them in.
Well, I think we probably need to do the proclamation earlier rather than later because that's part of the package that has to be submitted. So then it goes to some entity that's going to go through and review it and have questions. And so if we waited till right before to make the proclamation, then I can't send the package in to say, here we go, here's our proclamation, we're officially qualified. So that gives us time to iron out any questions. I think if we could make the proclamation in the new year, 2018 in January, and then I could take that signed document and put it with the package. I'll go ahead and collect everything else I need, some of the numbers, so that as soon as I get that signed document, I can dispatch it.
And is that out of Nebraska or DC? Where is it?
You know, I'm not sure. I'd have to look. I know they've got a pretty nice web interface that you do all this. It's got the checklist and a place to upload all your documents, and you go through a multitude of steps.
Friday of April.
And so my action item, I will send a copy of what I've got, this draft, to Mike so he can look at it and pop in a paragraph about the tree. And then for the Bowie history validation, I'm not sure if that would be the Friends or Keith, or who would be the best entity to look at that and say, that's good. Okay. So it'd be really just Keith, or we're sure this is a good reference?
About the
About
Bowie Park?
I mean, is there anything
You know, mine is,
Yeah, tell you, Scott, when you send that to me, take a look at it, because you know what we keep talking about with Bowie is the botanical diversity of the park, and had a weed wrangle meeting a few weeks back over in Nashville. Had both ladies from the park represented at this meeting. And the weed wrangle, of course, is in removing of the invasive non-native species. And, you know, they're gung-ho there. And it's to protect the diversity of the park, because if you go to these other parks, urban parks like Warner Park, Radnor Lake, and Nashville, and look at it, it's monoculture. And that's not happening here yet. So, protecting, if I could say something in there about the fact that it's such a natural jewel because of the fact that it is relatively clean. So that you'll have something in that, the Bowie history, and something about the park already.
Yeah, I already have, and it's basically that section that I've got that came from their website.
These species.
Yeah.
Right, so there may be things you could
Yeah, I
You
could probably-
could tune that
yeah,
up
I could-
with.
oh, yeah.
Native plant species or something. That might be interesting.
Not if I take everything down to the herbaceous layer,
Oh, the
I mean,
billions.
I could tell you how many oaks, different species of oaks, there's probably 6, 7, 3 hickories, 2 ash, 2 maples, 4 elms. I mean, we could break it down like that, and then there's the shrub layer, but, I mean, if you just, it's, what people see, botanists see at that park is that it's the epitome of the eastern hardwood forest that occurs on the western Highland Rim.
Well, there you go.
I can't repeat that. You're gonna have to write, did you write everything?
No, but it's on tape.
It's on tape, okay.
Okay, well, I will update our dates that we've decided, and then I'll send that over to Mike. And then he can include what, his thoughts in there. And then I will also send it over to Keith for just validation, verification of what we've got stated there. And with that, we'll be able to release it and ask for it to be brought to the BOC.
And then, Scott, do you happen to know the turnaround? We do this, and we get all our paperwork done, and we have the official Arbor Day, the plaque, the signs, Tree City, USA.
I do not, but I will research that, and if I can't find an answer on that particular time, and I'll give them a ring or contact them.
That sure puts legitimacy into all this. Usually freestanding.
I mean, you would think it's.
Usually it's freestanding. Uh-huh.
Because a lot of places I've seen.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess you could do that. You could do that. Do we have, we don't have any signs, that's fine. And I guess you have to figure out how many. Basically, we have 3 entrances into the city.
I would say we'll need
3, yeah,
And
so
then I
there's
would
3.
say if you would want 4, because it would be nice to have something at the entrance to Bowie Park.
That's right, once we're approved to buy, right? Once we're approved to display it.
I said they'll be thrilled to sell them.
So I will check into the turnaround timing of that as well as cost associated and what options. Any other discussion on that item? Moving on to 5.3, Bowie Park's landscape design update. The note here is funding for design and planning of landscape architecture design encompassing the full park system. Debbie Rainey's on that one. Any other thoughts, discussion on that one? Should we leave that one on there, recurring, Debbie? Okay. Next item is 5.4, landscape codes for planning and review update. The notation is review updates and changes to the codes. Create final for submittal to reviewers. I guess that's if we had input. And I recall, perhaps, that hearing some discussion about where some of the activities should reside regarding tree approvals and inspections and those kind of things. Do you remember? Who ultimately has the authority where that process, well, he has the authority to check, but who at the city entity, which board or commission did it make sense handling that piece? I don't know if you remember those discussions that were.
I do. One of the things that came out in our last planning commission meeting was to discuss that. And according to all of the confusion that existed in everybody who was at that meeting, it appeared to fall out that the board was an advisory committee to discuss appropriate trees and landscaping and to provide input on some of the codes, but that ours was not necessarily to review and approve plans. That was indeed Mr. Berkeley's in the staff review meetings, that he actually signed off on the finals. Yes. And if he has not signed off on it at the planning commission, we have to know why, and will he be able to review it and sign off on it? Theoretically, we could approve something pending his final approval. I believe that that is what I heard through all of that discussion. Design manual said.
Yeah, but just to be clear, the staff review meeting is my first interaction with a new development, okay? And usually first introduction, sign off. I can make suggestions of, and I've got a list in 7 tonight on the agenda, talking about some, some of the things. And that, but that doesn't mean I've signed off. It means that I said, okay, well, we need to do this, okay? And they take plans and I never see them again.
Problem.
And
That's the problem.
that's the loophole.
So I think that
Say that someone in code probably needs to communicate with me. No, the staff review meeting is, again, at that point, like, example was a subdivision, Cumberland, that was going to put some street trees in, and the guy I didn't know there was an approved tree. At that point, I said, okay, and the trees are not designated. The trees are not specified of what the species are yet. It's too early in the process. Okay. So he goes back, landscape architect, whatever, goes back, engineer, takes that plan, makes those changes. I don't see that again.
Ever. Oh, I thought those came back to staff review.
Once that staff review, there's maybe once or twice so far that I've seen a particular project twice from staff review. And it was not because of the plants, it was, building codes or something that, it was not, had nothing to do with the plants.
Developer comes in.
What I see at staff review, what I see at staff review is a plan, typically, is a plan. And I'll go through, oh, there's the landscape plan. If I see a sidewalk with what we call a hail strip between the curb and the sidewalk, I will question, well, shouldn't there be street trees? I'll say that knowing that there probably isn't an ordinance that makes it mandatory.
I think that is one of the things that they are trying to do with
This
the design
is,
is to actually codify some of this stuff that is just,
it's not
but it's not
necessarily been
actually
written yet.
codified.
Right. And then and if they have the trees listed, and there's been a couple of designs come in past couple of months. The new medical center a few months ago with a plant list, a tree list. I said, okay, well, there was 2 trees on that were not on the approved tree list. Okay, we'll make those changes. I didn't see it again. So that's the breakdown, is that I would like to be able to see, and the way that it used to work with previous codes, I would get a phone call, some kind of message. Okay, we have the final plan. You want to come by and take a look?
So you need to
I would think that I probably need to approve that final plan before it goes. Yeah, it's just a matter.
Saying design review.
Staff review is for everybody. You'll have the police department, the fire department. You've got Dixon Water Authority. You've got Keith Paisley. We're all, and Will, the engineer, is there. And we're all saying, okay, well, yeah, follow what it says on our website, the city website and codes. Here's your package, is what you should have. And more times than not, a lot of these guys, especially if it's commercial, they'll come in with a full-blown packet, and they've got it all done. They're ready to go. Where stormwater works, everything. And all of us will have our input. And at that point, the input is, for me, is that, okay, are you supposed to be putting trees in? If I don't see it on the plan and I see where you're supposed to have, you should have trees like going down the sidewalk, then I'll just mention that. That's about as far as I can go with it. I have no idea. I don't know. I kind of doubt that.
So are you seeing things that have been signed off, or just things that people have suggested?
Nothing has been signed off on when we see it. There are not signatures on anything.
And that's where Micah with codes, inspector, everybody that's in codes, actually, this is it's really heavy on them. I understand it. I've really appreciated by attending these staff review meetings. I appreciate what they have to go through is that they've got to get all this lined up. And these guys that come in, first time they've come in to the city and say, well, we're going to build commercial, residential, whatever, and we're giving them guidance. That's what I think the staff review meeting is about, is to say, okay, this is not right. But before it goes to the boards, before it goes to planning, definitely before it gets up to BOC, you shouldn't have all these changes. So we're going to save you a month of work. And I believe that's why originally the staff review meeting was set aside, is that this saved time for everybody, not just the developer, the builder, but with the city. So let's nip it in the bud right off the bat. Okay, you need trees. You already have trees listed on here. Oh, but they're not the right trees. Okay, here's a recommendation I will make. Here's a approved list. You can go back to that on our website. You can pick up the approved list and pick off of that, or I can give you some recommendations. Oh, by the way, the official city tree is a redbud. So that's where it is, and I don't, about half, like on this last one in November, about half of the list on the agenda was rezoning. But if it has something to do with trees, and that's going to be something to discuss on number 7 tonight, is that, don't see and I would like to.
And I think in our discussion here, it actually is covered 5.4 and 5.5, because 5.5 spoke about procedures for review, specifically around regarding the role of the tree commission. So I don't know what the action item would be. It sounds like there's the initial meeting to give feedback and clarity to save time and give input, and then the entity that wants to build is going to take that under advisement. They're going to form some plans, hopefully, taking all of those, police, fire, all those principles in play. And then that plan, presumably with updates, would go in front of the planning commission. But the piece that I guess it sounds like is missing is Mike, in this case, has never really had a chance to come back and say, hey, here's what I recommended. These were some concerns, to say, I looked at it, and that's exactly what I was talking about. It looks good. That piece isn't necessarily there.
And I can only go by history, is that at one time, when I did come by and sign off on it, I actually I signed the design.
It sounds like a reasonable idea to me.
So that means that as far as the city arbor is concerned, all the landscape, the trees, the appropriate plants on that design were approved. Otherwise, when it left the staff review the way it is now, it leaves staff review, and I don't see it again, and again, this is just my opinion, is that there may be somebody that doesn't know what these plants are signing off on this and moving it on. So before the planning commission gets it, I need to make recommendations on it.
It would certainly make sense to me, and
How do I do that?
when it's not. No one
And things could be slipping through. I'm not saying that that's the case, but things could be slipping through the way that this is right now, very open.
And I would think if we have staff,
No, you don't,
Right.
yeah.
they've got people who know that,
Subject matter experts that have weighed in, yeah.
because if they aren't doing that,
What's the action item then? And as I said before, I think this was kind of a combination discussion of 5.4 and 5.5, which takes us to item 6, new business.
I'd like to mention, by the way, this is planting season, and calling Scott and asking him for go ahead to plant more red buds and do a replacement out here with this dead.
Item 7 was staff review meeting update.
All right, it's been a while, so I'm going to go by memory on some of this, but let's see. Okay. Fairview Station Phase 1, off of Tiger Trail. This is the one that's over by the middle school. Oh, element, I'm sorry, West, yeah, I'm sorry, Westwood. And so there's a cul-de-sac. They had street trees listed, not the species, but they showed where trees would be planted. Except,
division up behind Westwood.
three
Been
lots,
improved.
yeah. This is on 11. And there's a cul-de-sac that they were, this is where sometimes the fire department comes in, is that the cul-de-sac is not wide enough to be able to turn it. So there was some discussion with that, and then there was no trees listed in that. So I mentioned to the developer that 20-foot spacing, he's missing 4 trees. Kind of conversation I had. The two new subdivisions on Cumberland actually going to have street trees actually on Cumberland Road. I'm not sure anywhere down Cumberland sidewalk out there. Whispering Winds and Cumberland Estates. Street trees. At that point, all I said, because there was no specific species listed, is that please check our website, and on that you have the approved tree list. Those are Habitat for Humanity.
Want to rezone that to 20, which is very in line with what else
They should follow, but here's the big question again, is there something in any ordinance that says residential, that they have to come
clear-cut property.
Great. And it makes sense to me, and I talk to people outside of, other places and ask them what they think. If a guy comes in, clear cuts, whatever, and maybe not even clear cut, but and leave some trees in, like what's going on over in Horn Tavern. But they plant trees back in a front yard. They put one tree. That tree in that front yard, before that house is sold, still should come under this. Can't tell the homeowner what they can and
Right.
cannot. But
Transferred.
the builder should, not just street trees, but any tree they plant, any landscape they plant in that lot before it's sold to the homeowner, which we don't have any jurisdiction, tell the builder, this is your approved tree list and shrub list.
Habitat, as a developer, we work very hard to make sure that we are in compliance with that list. We want, our neighborhoods tend to get a bad rap anyway, so we want to
And
make sure that
usually,
we are all completely in compliance
Yeah.
with any
and
kind of
usually
guidelines.
Habitat usually does. And the one, the first one that went in on Horn Tavern, they've got surface berries, they've got some cool plants planted out there. That's not, but it's some of these other developers that are coming in and I think sometimes that they're at the end, the last thing that's done in a subdivision, imagine this, is to plant that street tree. That's the last thing. The curb's done, everything's done, the sidewalk's put in, and the very last thing done. The houses are finishing up. Last thing is to put that tree in. A lot of times at that time, and by that time, you get what you get. And sometimes which is a big issue with me too, is quality is not the size. We have a minimum 2-inch caliber. Should have a minimum 2-inch caliber. You can't go in there and plant a stick. And it is got to be off the approved tree list. So there's all types of, all levels of qualifying, I guess. And all of these within a few minutes of where I live, I'd be glad to drive by there. I'll go on record in saying that.
How does that occur now? Who does that fall to? Is that like part of the codes inspection for final permitting on the, the final review? Is there?
Yeah, it's Kristen. I guess she's, Micah's doing the inspection, but I don't know if he's inspecting the landscape. He's doing the building.
I don't know that anybody looks at any other plan.
Anything else on item 7?
That's all I got.
Item 8, update on tree bank funds.
If we do purchase some trees to plant out, that'll come out of the tree bank.
But nothing else has come out of it, though, right? Fences?
No.
Fences? That's not a tree.
Was a tree.
No, that's a joke. It was
Killing me small.
I had to stand up in front of the BOC a few years back and give a definition of what landscaping was. It does include hardscapes.
Yes, it does.
So if we say money for the tree bank is for landscaping,
Mm-hmm.
patios.
So on our next meeting, we'll just try to see if we can get the latest number. Number 9, citizens' comments. None today? And that takes us to item 10, which is the adjournment. The next tree commission meeting date is January 2nd of 2018, 7 PM at City Hall. And with that, we're adjourned. Thank you.